All right, you're all set.
All right, great. I will call the November 21st, 2022 meeting of the Barnstable Community Preservation Committee to order. I'll call the roll. Barry Duenas. Marilyn Fifield.
Here.
Deb Converse.
Here.
Catherine Garofoli.
Here.
Okay. Tom Lee.
Here.
Barley Lewis.
Here.
Stephen Robichaud. James Tenalia. And Lindsay Council is here. I'll make the announcement. Please note that
Jim Tenaglia just signed it.
Okay, Jim's here then. Okay, I'll read the announcement. Please note that tonight's meeting is recorded and broadcast on Channel 18 and in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20. The chair must inquire whether anyone is taping this meeting and to please make their presence known. Seeing none, we'll go forward with the first item on the agenda, which is Director of Finance, Mark Milne, will discuss our community preservation funds. Mark, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Milne, Director of Finance for the Town of Barnstable. I'm going to share my screen.
For some reason I'm kicked out, or I'm just whirling around in Netherlands.
You see the screen now?
I just see the round thing going round and round. So I can't see the screen numbers.
The table, you should have it on the package.
I have it in the package, which is in front of me. I just don't have it on the screen.
Mr.
So
Chairman,
yes.
Would you like me to proceed with?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so in your packets this evening were a set of financial statements we provided to the committee that outline how the Community Preservation Fund performed in fiscal year 2022, which ended on June 30th, 2022. At the end of the fiscal year, we closed out this program with almost $14 million in total assets, most of that being in the form of cash, which was $11,479,877 at the end of the fiscal year. Total liabilities for the Community Preservation Fund at June 30th were $2,267,240. Most of that was the outstanding bonds balance, bonds payable balance for the bonds associated with the former land bank program. That was $1,981,200 at the end of the fiscal year, which leaves us a net fund balance of $11,727,339 at the close of the fiscal year. 237,000 of that was allocated to outstanding encumbrances for the program areas. We had 3,468,000 reserves for continuing appropriations. These are appropriations previously made by the council for which we have yet to expend or contract for under the various projects that are outstanding. And then we had just over $8 million of fund balance reserved for future appropriation. 261,000 of that being under the Historic Preservation Program, just over $1 million for recreation and open space, and a majority of it, or $6,756,000, in the undesignated program area, which could be used for any one of those three programs. Page 2, we're going into page 2 here is your statement of revenue, expenditures, and fund balance for fiscal year 22. The Community Preservation Fund realized just over $6 million of total program revenues, most of that being in the form of surtax revenue that was generated, just over $2 million of state aid, Most of that being the state matching funds, which we received $1,770,000 in fiscal year 22, and we did receive a grant of $250,680 associated with the, I think it was 830 Wakeby Road, a land acquisition, and then some investment income. On the expenditure side, we incurred $5,841,000 in total expenditures, $2.5 million for the community housing program, which was the amount that was transferred to our affordable housing trust fund, $337,808 in historic program expenditures or historic preservation expenditures, and $1,341,000 in recreation and open space expenditures. Just under $95,000 in administrative expenditures, and then under the undesignated, that was debt service associated for land bank bonds of $1,567,000. So the excess revenue generated over those expenditures was $172,000 overall for the program, which resulted in a slight increase in the fund balance to that $11,727,000. On page 3 is the schedule of unreserved fund balance by program area. At the close of the fiscal year, we didn't have anything remaining for the community housing program. We had $778 for the historic preservation program, just over $1 million for the open space and recreation program, and $6,756,000 under the undesignated program, for a total of just over $8 million of fund balance available for appropriation. The next schedule on page 4 gives you a...
Excuse me, Mark. Just so you know, the public is still looking at page 1.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sorry. Moving on to page 4. This is the schedule of the outstanding Community Preservation Fund appropriations, and shows the balance that, as I mentioned previously, $3,468,000 down here. This is the reserved for continuing appropriation balance, or the balance of all these appropriations which have yet been expended or encumbered. So we have $3,468,000 remaining. And these are the various projects that they're associated with. And it's broken down at the bottom here by open space recreation, historic preservation, and community housing program. And the last schedule here is the outstanding bonds payable for the Community Preservation Fund. You'll notice that we had a large drop off in debt service here, fiscal year 23. From the previous year, we're going to have another large drop off in fiscal year 24. And that is a result of these land bank bonds expiring in the near future. It's been 20 years almost, believe it or not, since we issued that last bond. So we are near the end of paying off those or those borrowings associated with those land acquisitions in the former land bank program, which will really open up the opportunity for the committee to start thinking about future and what the committee wants to do with that $4 million of surtax it takes in every year, plus state matching funds that we receive. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding these financial statements from committee members if you'd like me to. Thank you. Now stop.
That'd be great. Members?
I've got one. Hey, Mark, can you just touch on how you guys are managing the interest at this point? Obviously, rates have gone up sharply. Are we starting to benefit from that? Obviously, having $6 million or so, or $8 million in cash. I know money markets have gone up in Treasury. 6-month Treasuries at 4.4%. Are we starting to see the benefits on that on our side yet?
Yes, we will. In fiscal year 23, things, as you mentioned, are improving. We should see that across the board in all of the town's funds, not just the community preservation fund, but all of our other town funds where investment income is allocated to. Just so you know, our philosophy in the town is first of all, in the order of priority, it's safety. Number 2, liquidity, and number 3 is yield. So we do have an investment policy that prioritizes the safety, liquidity, and yield. But that being said, yes, we are seeing, those safe type of investments starting to provide a better return. But we're also going to see much more expensive borrowing. That's the downside of what's happening. And we were issuing bonds last year at under 2% for a 20-year bond, and we expect to see that double this fiscal year when we go out for our next borrowing. So that's the downside. But the good side is we should see more investment return.
Anyone else?
Wendy, I
Yes,
just
yeah.
had a question about the match from the state. How are you seeing it trending?
So it's going, the last few years have been performing well. There have been additional supplemental appropriations made to the state trust fund from supplemental budget action by the state of Massachusetts. I believe the economic bond bill that was just passed provided another $20 million for the state trust fund, which will help keep the matching funds allocation strong. But every year, more communities do adopt the program. So more is being shared, the state match is being shared amongst more communities every year. But we are seeing some of these supplemental appropriations from the state help. And I would anticipate that the state's trust funds revenues may see a slight decline coming up because, real estate transactions were very strong for the past couple of years.
Yeah.
I think we're going to start seeing a downturn in that as this economy has cooled, the housing market has cooled. And so I would expect that their revenues at the state level will be affected by that, but it's too early to tell how much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you, Mark, for the information. I think we've been waiting for this information so that we have those latest financial information. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chris, you had a question? You're muted, Chris.
Yes, please, thank you. And Mark, thank you for your stellar work as always. Will this PowerPoint be available on the CPC website for the public to access?
These handouts were included in the agenda material, which is on the town's website under today's meeting. Yes.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Anyone else? Members? None? Seeing none? Any members of the public care to comment? Seeing none? Thank you very much, Mark. We'll move on to our next item.
Thank you, Mark.
And that would be the approval of the draft Community Preservation Committee regular meeting minutes from October 17th, 2022. Any comments, corrections, additions, a motion? Catherine?
I know this is sort of minute, but did the copy that I have, the bullet points are in red and not in black. So like the actual color of the bullet points are red. And I'm not sure if that's supposed to be the way that it should be.
That's your copy, Catherine.
That's funny. No, I had red bullets too.
Oh, okay.
So, anyway, any second to the motion? Or no, that actually wasn't a motion. Is there a motion to approve?
I would move to approve them, Marilyn.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
James seconds. Any other comments, members? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Terry Duenas, have you joined us? No? Marilyn Fifield?
Aye.
Deb Converse?
Yes.
Gaston Garofoli,
Yes.
Tom Lee,
Yes.
Farley Lewis. Farley? You're muted.
Unmute.
You're muted.
I abstain because I wasn't present at that meeting.
Ah, very good. Steve Robichaud? Steven joined us? I don't see him. James Tenalia?
Yes.
And Lindsay Council votes yes. Very good. We'll move to the next item, which was a letter of intent from the Centerville-Osterville-Marstons Mills, COMM Water Department, requesting a fund of $200,000 to enable COMM to obtain the professional services necessary to quickly respond to potential properties as they become available for the protection of COMM Water District drinking water supply. And this was continued from October, and we have Craig Crocker from the district available. You're on, Craig.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. I just hope you consider the request. If you have any questions, certainly I'm here to answer them.
I did go over this with the legal department, and it is an acceptable community preservation expense. And what this in effect does is give these folks an opportunity to do appraisals and those kinds of things without dipping into our administrative fund. So it is an appropriate expense. Any other questions? Deb?
I just thought there was supposed to be sort of a template that we could use. I mean, I have no idea how much appraisals cost. I mean, it's free floating 200,000, and I thought we wanted sort of a template of what it would be.
I don't know what to do with that request. A template of what or for what, you know, these things are so fluid, if you will. Appraisals can run from $1,500 to $10,000, depending on if you're going to use it, you're planning on using it for state grant, which requires what's known as a yellow book appraisal. It has to be performed by appraisers that are certified in these state grant funding requests. So that would be difficult to pin down. And then the other thing is this can also be used for studies to see if a property would be appropriate as a property to protect the drinking water supply. In other words, which way does the water flow, for example? It's a pretty broad-reaching list of items that these things can be spent on. So legal fees, the same kind of things we see when we're doing a project, for example, contingency plans, those kinds of things. So
Lindsay,
it's difficult to come
question
up.
on that. Do we?
Sure, go ahead.
How many appraisals have been done on average, say for the last 5 years? How many properties have been acquired the last 5 years, and how many studies have been done in the last 5 years? I think that might help. I'm having a hard time just writing a blank check for 200 grand without quantifying anything. Have they spent 200 grand in the last 5 years to do this? That's what I'm struggling with. Is this a massive number we're giving that's going to last for the next 2 decades, or is this going to be spent in the next 6 months? I think that's where I'm struggling with. If we haven't spent 200 grand in the last decade on appraisals and studies and all that, if there's a need for it, I understand it, but I'm just struggling with just a blanket open request without numbers behind it.
Thank you. I sort of agree, because I have no idea, what, for example, and you just gave some information, Lindsay, that helped, because I didn't know. I mean, I thought it would be offers on the land or something, but that's a little, for example, even if it's not pinned down to exactly what it would cost, it would be helpful for me.
We, in the past, generally do 1 or 2 appraisals a year ourselves, but we do rely on the land trust to perform them, who are our partners in this.
Yeah.
And they have spent a considerable amount of money, particularly, for example, with the last project we just approved last Thursday night on the Commerce Road. They had to prepare all the appraisals and things for that project. And they do that outside of our budget.
Mm-hmm.
This is inclusive of that because, you know, the district doesn't budget for these kinds of things. So,
Right.
you know, in the last 10 years, certainly spent that much of our funds as well as our partners' funds on that. But in terms of open-ended, you know, they'd have to get approval of what they're spending it on, you know, through us. In other words, they can't just go out and willy-nilly spend the money. There will be accounting that's required to make sure that they're spending it in an appropriate way. They would come to us, say, oh, we want to do an appraisal on X property. We've got an estimate. We've got estimates and it will cost this much. Okay, you sign off on it. So we would be checking that
But if
as
we,
we go forward.
I guess if we have to approve it going forward, why don't we just approve them?
Yeah, well,
Going forward?
Yeah.
I guess that's where I'm struggling with.
Yeah, well, you don't
I
want to have to go through this every time they come in with a
Right.
project.
right.
That's to avoid that process
Mhm,
and give some flexibility.
mhm. And I agree with that, but it would be helpful to know what James just asked, Craig, you know, how much has been spent? What is a ballpark per year? I mean, is it 200,000 or is it 5,000? Just 200,000 to me is a lot of, unless, I don't know, it's just a lot, but I know you want to make the process quicker. I get that.
Right, we really don't want to go through this, particularly
Yeah.
in our situation where you have a project in the works, to have to come back and go through us and then the town council again.
Yeah,
So it's similar to us applying for our own admin funds. We come up with a budget, if you will, for what we think these things might cost, and then we have to get it approved by council, town council. So that's really the process here.
yeah.
And it's similar to providing contingency funds for a building project. And,
Mhm,
you know, you need these funds in hand before you can
mhm.
move the project forward. Someone else had a hand up. I think I missed them. Farley.
I was just reading through the minutes where Jessica Rappacetti inquired about putting the request into the annual warrant for the district voters, and that it had, according to Mr. Carker, it confirmed it had not yet been brought to the district voters. Does this, I mean, that seemed like a reasonable idea. So I'm just wondering if there's a good process for that to go forward.
Greg, do you have a process to do something like that?
Yeah, we do it for our own budget every spring. We do that. So we haven't done that. In a way, if you think about it, we already have. Those residents have been putting their tax dollars into the 11 million that Mr. Milne just spelled out for the past 20 years. $4 million a year comes out of taxes from the residents that we all serve.
Interesting point right there. Someone else had the hand up. Who was it? Tom, I believe it was you.
I was thinking about Jessica's comment in terms of whether the COMM can take some of the funding through their budgeting process. I'm thinking of not 100% to say maybe, you know, part of the money should be coming out from the COMM as a share program. You know, one thought, you know, 200,000 is a lot. You know, do we see that to spend in the next 5 years? You know, whether it should be 100,000, then that sort of variable should be discussed or considered.
Okay. Catherine, you did I see your hand?
There was also discussion of us potentially looking at $100,000 versus the $200,000. That, I guess, based off of the additional information that we received from Mr. Crocker about how much has been spent in the last 5 years on appraisals and things, would be really helpful for us to consider.
I second that, Catherine. Yeah.
So I guess the question to you, Craig, if you guys haven't spent any money on appraisals for land in the last few years?
No, not in a while. The last time we did an outright purchase of land that I can remember, we had to do 3 appraisals. I think that's part of the procurement process. So I can't remember off the top of my head how much that was. I can tell you the Wakeby Road project that we just did, 830 Wakeby Road, which wasn't supposed to cost the district anything, cost us $25,000 in legal fees. So that's about the only example I have. And if we do have a couple parcels that we have interest in, maybe three or 4 at this point. So that, you're probably looking upwards of 20 to 50,000 per parcel, and that's probably spread out. That doesn't happen in a year. Nothing really happens in a year.
Yeah.
It's probably over 4 or 5 years before we could actually go from getting a deed,
Right.
or any type of conservation restriction or anything like that. So, I see these funds working out over the next 4 or 5 years, maybe even longer. But however that lasts, I'm not sure how long these funds last for you guys or how long you're supposed to spend them. But I know for us, and a special article like that has a 5-year life to it. So.
Do you think you'd be able to work with if the committee was willing to start with 100? Did that give you enough to work with for the next?
Yeah, that would be more than grateful. I mean, that would get us started, and we could probably try to knock out maybe one or 2 of the parcels that at least get started on it, get the appraisals done, and maybe get some kind of agreement, legal fees, and those.
Okay. Chris.
Thank you very much, Chairman, Council. For what it's worth, in all our town's local comprehensive plans, our open space and recreation plans, there is no higher purpose for purchasing open space than for municipal water. And I contend that you would want our water districts and the town, who has a ownership of the Hyannis water supply, to be able to be nimble enough when a parcel comes for sale, so that you don't have to wait for a monthly meeting for approval to get funding for an appraisal or legal services or other professional services, engineering, that it might take for us to be responsive for our future drinking water supply. In our towns, the town manager made a presentation recently on our town's, I forgot the name of it now. The every 2 years we do an evaluate the what?
State of the town, kind of?
No, it's the annual town survey or strategic plan. Thank you. And inevitably, drinking water is number 1. So I don't know what the reservation is for securing water or funding to just do the professional services it takes to acquire drinking water. When we're all dead and gone 100 years from now, somebody will look really smart for having the foresight for securing open space for water. Otherwise, we're going to desalinate the ocean. Thank you.
Deb?
I don't think there's a reservation in putting money aside. It's just the amount of money, having no guidance in how much is spent in a year or 2 years or 5 years. I think it's just some concern because the Affordable Housing Trust, whatever the whole name is, the trust, has money that we've given to them, and we get a report every 3 months. And to me, that's not quite enough. And right now they're doing diligence, but it'd be nice to have guide. And that's what I'm sort of feeling about water, even though it is the highest priority, but so is housing. And so, we need to do something that gives us a little information about what's going on. And I'd be more in favor of the 100,000 to begin with the possibility of more, because I know it's quick. It's being able to react quickly is important. But this is only
Okay.
one water department. One out of
Right.
how many? Yeah. So,
Anyone else on the committee with questions? Being none, I'll open to the public. Anyone in the public care to comment to the matter? Seeing none, anyone have a motion?
I'll make a motion to move it into the application phase with the amount of $100,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments, discussions on that? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Barry Duenas, has he joined us? Nope. Marilyn Fifield?
Aye.
Was that an aye, Marilyn, I think?
Yes, it was.
Thank you.
Or yes.
Deb Converse?
yes.
Kathleen Garofoli?
Yes.
Tom Lee?
Yes.
Riley Lewis?
Yes.
Steve Robichaud? Have Steve joined us? Nope. James Tenalia?
Yes.
And Lindsay Council votes yes. Very good, Craig. We'll see you next month to submit your application.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item is a letter of intent requesting $350,000 in community preservation, open space and recreation funds for the acquisition of a 3.09 plus or minus acre parcel located at 153 Oakmont Road, Cummaquid. This parcel is adjacent to protected Barnstable Fire District land and will further protect this resource in perpetuity through a conservation restriction and preserve the character of the residential neighborhood from overdevelopment in the future. And this was continued from October 17th.
And I
We have
recuse
Marty
myself.
Riley with us.
I recuse myself, Lindsay.
Thank you, Deb.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I'm here. So first of all, I just want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the members of the committee for placing us on the agenda again here this evening and giving us an opportunity to further discuss the request that I made in my letter dated October 11th, 2022, requesting the Community Preservation Committee to buy the 3.09 plus acres of property on 153 Oakmont Road for the purpose of...
Excuse me.
Yes.
Excuse Lindsay,
Yes.
we should ask Deb to turn off the camera. Deb, turn off the camera. You're recusing yourself.
Can't hear you, Deb.
I don't know. I don't think I know how to turn off the camera.
Lower left corner, it should
Yeah,
be next
video.
to the mute.
There.
There you go.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. Sorry about that, Marty.
Oh, that's okay. And again, I just thank the members of the committee and you, Mr. Chairman, for giving us an opportunity to go before the board again tonight to continue our discussions relative to the CPC and our request to have the CPC in the town of Barnstable purchase the property, the 3.09 plus acres of property located at 153 Oakmont Road as open space in perpetuity with a conservation restriction, which would prevent the property from ever being developed in the future. With me tonight is the president of the Cummaquid Heights Neighborhood Association, Mr. Joe Berlandi. And Joe would like to just make a brief statement after my remarks. And I've had numerous meetings with Mr. Berlandi and his board of directors, as well as all the residents in the neighborhood. And they have all expressed a desire to have this property preserved as open space to prevent it from further development in the future. And the reasons I'm making a request to the CPC committee tonight is, number one, to be respectful of the neighborhood. And number two, as I outlined in my letter of October 11th for the October 17th meeting, and my detailed letter, subsequent letter of November 16th, 2022 for tonight's meeting, are several. And first and foremost, as referenced tonight by Mark Milne in his capacity as Director of Finance for the town, the CPC has money in the budget for selective open space recreation purchases, which I am told, that occasionally you look to acquire open space. Specifically in that budget is Director of Finance Mill referenced, there's approximately $1 million to $1.2 million in the specific open space recreation fund. And then there's another approximately $6.7 million in the undesignated fund, which can be used for either open space recreation or housing or historic preservation. The second reason uniquely related to this particular property that's presently owned by the Barnstable Housing Authority is that the money derived from the purchase of the property in the amount of $325,000 would go directly to the Barnstable Housing Authority for housing, to maintain and repair their existing housing stock, and also for them to consider the utilization of some of those funds to acquire another property which has public water and public sewer, which would allow them to have an even greater density in the creation of new housing. Thirdly, is that this property, as you know from our previous discussion in the GIS maps, abuts the adjacent 10.75 acre Barnstable Fire Water District property, and it would further protect that property from further development, which, as has been referenced earlier, is very important. Lastly, and I think equally as important, the entire Cummaquid Heights Neighborhood Association supports this purchase, because I guess they've had a lot of development in the neighborhood, in the Barnstable Cummaquid neighborhood, with a lot of units that were developed for 55 and over by Everly and some other developments, and they're just concerned that their neighborhood has absorbed enough of housing, and they'd like to see this preserved as open space. In addition to going through the reasons to support the purchase, I also wanted to update you, the CPC committee, on several meetings that I've had since the last meeting on October 17th. Specifically, first and foremost, on Sunday, October 23rd, 2022, I attended the Cummaquid Heights Neighborhood Annual Meeting, and it was attended by over 110 people. And I'm told it was the largest gathering of their members in the neighborhood in their entire history. And at the meeting, they signed a petition in support of the purchase of the property as open space in perpetuity. And I did submit that petition, Mr. Chairman and members, to all of you as an attachment to my detailed letter that I submitted in preparation for tonight's meeting. And many of the neighbors are participating on this call by Zoom, and I I think they would desire to make their concerns known in the public comment period. In addition to that, I think most importantly as well, for the members of the committee, at the October 17th meeting, several members of the Community Preservation Committee raised specific questions of the BHA as to what they would use the money if the property was sold. What would they use it for? Why didn't they develop it? And I met with them on the Barnstable Housing Authority Board of Directors on Thursday, October 20th, immediately following the meeting I had with the Community Preservation Committee on October 17th. And Deb Converse was there at that meeting with her unique role as a member of both the Barnstable Housing Authority Board and your CPC Board. And obviously she has recused herself this evening. But the first question that was asked by some of your members that night was, why did the BHA not develop the property for housing? And I specifically asked them that question at the meeting, and they responded to me that they generally don't develop their own parcels for housing. They usually have a private developer do it, and the reason for that is they have to pay prevailing wage when they construct the properties, construct the housing on their properties, which raises and increases the price for creating the housing exponentially. So that's the reason why they don't develop it themselves, and they have a developer do it, because the developer can generally bring it in for less cost because they don't have to necessarily adhere to prevailing wage. The second question that was asked was, what will the BHA do with the $325,000 they would receive from the sale of the property? And the answer to that was what I had surmised that night and had shared with the board, but they specifically answered the question and said they would use the much needed funds to maintain and repair their existing housing stock. Because I think, as we all know, the cost of materials and maintaining housing and properties have gone up significantly during the COVID period, and they need that money to maintain and repair their properties. And lastly, they also said that they would use some of that money to look for another property that they might be able to buy that is served by both public water and public sewer, where they would have the ability to create more density of units to address the housing crisis here on Cape Cod. So in conclusion, I just wanted to, again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come before you tonight, as well as the neighbors to weigh in with their concerns, and President Joe Berlandi. And respectfully tonight, I wanted to ask that if you can possibly bring this to a vote one way or the other, whether you want this to go to an application process, because in fairness to me, I have the property under agreement. I've incurred, substantial costs for architectural, engineering, legal, etc. And I'm not going to make any money conveying this property if it goes for open space. The $325,000 would go directly to the BHA, and the other $25,000 would merely reimburse me for my expenses that I've incurred. So that's important. Also, for the Barnstable Housing Authority, they need to have an answer as to which way this is going to go, because there's certain provisions in our purchase and sales agreement that have to be adhered to, and they obviously need the money for housing, for their housing needs. And lastly, for the neighbors who I've met with on several occasions, in fairness to them, we also need to kind of get an answer from you as to what your thoughts are, and so we can go forward in one direction or the other. So I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee, and I look forward to answering any questions that you have of me. And I just want to turn it briefly to President Joe Berlandi of the Cummaquid Heights Neighborhood Association for his brief comment, and open the floor.
I'd like to go with the questions now,
Okay, thank you,
Marty, rather than get to the abutters and neighbors.
Thank
Are there
you.
any questions from the members regarding this?
I got some.
Go ahead, Jim.
So Joe, so you mentioned, BHA would, do better with the funds somewhere else. My question is to you is, if we don't pass this for conservation, you're still going to give them the money for the housing, and they get the money, and there will be housing developed. Is that correct?
That is correct. If in fact the decision is made by the CPC committee that for some reason you don't want to preserve it as open space, then yes, I would proceed with the development of the property for housing.
And my second question is, if this is for, just like our last one for water protection, why is Barnstable Water not also coming forward? Is there a PFAS issue that they're passing on this land for, or do they simply not need it because they have enough space already?
My understanding is, and I've had numerous meetings with the town, the state, the neighbors on this matter, put in really a tremendous amount of time, is that the Barnstable Water Fire District has just recently incurred substantial costs for about a $20 million filtration system plant, and they don't have any money to do any acquisitions or anything of that nature. And I probably believe that they have a 10.75 acre parcel already. So maybe they do feel they're sufficiently protected, but certainly adding this to open space would only, add to that protection.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I can also help to answer that. I spoke with the folks at the Water District, and they were not interested in this or participating in this acquisition. They didn't see it as an important project for them right now. So, Catherine, did I see your hand go up?
Yes, thanks, Lindsay. My question is, if the town, as the entity that purchases this property, someone will have to hold the conservation restriction. My first guess is that it would be Barnstable Land Trust or some other entity, whether it's the Water District, which I doubt they're going to want to hold. I'm trying to understand how we come to a place where we understand who is the purchaser and who is the holder of the CR, because that conversation would need to be brought up with Barnstable Land Trust to see if they'd even be willing to hold it.
So
I can answer that.
I can answer that as well.
I did speak with the land trust folks and they're not interested.
Well, I would just say, Lindsay, if I could just add to this very briefly. I met with Janet Milkman, I believe it was last Thursday or Friday at their Barnstable Land Trust offices. And I told her everything that I was trying to do to be respectful to the neighbors. I believe a few of the neighbors had even called her to ask if they would consider the CR. And she told me a couple of things. She said, first and foremost, Marty, she said, this is not really at the top of our list for open space preservation. She did say that given the tremendous need for housing, she thought that possibly that a small project there would be okay. But she did say to me that if the Community Preservation Committee did decide to acquire it, that she would hold the CR restriction. So I just want to, in fairness to everybody on the board and the neighbors, share that sentiment. And that meeting happened last, I think it was Thursday or Friday. Thank you.
Okay, members, any other questions?
Well, so can I go back to my question?
Sure.
I mean, the CPC cannot just buy a land. It would be the town holding the land. Am I speaking out of turn here, Lindsay?
The town would buy it,
Right.
theoretically, and we would need to assign a conservation restriction to an eligible entity.
Right.
So if the land trust decided they weren't interested, we would have to find another qualified land trust that could
Right.
hold the CR. It might be Mass Audubon, it might be Orinda, we'd have to go and find someone.
Yeah.
Find another entity to hold it. And who was next? Farley, did I see your hand up? Or Tom? Go ahead.
Lindsay, when you talk to the water district, my question is, are they intending to develop this parcel that they own, that's 10.4 acres as a drinking water source or not?
No, they don't think they can get the 400-foot setback with the highway behind. They just didn't see it as a potential future supply area.
So it's not a future well location for that? Okay.
No.
Yep.
Not right now.
Okay.
Farley, did I see you?
Yeah, I was just wondering how the Barnstable Housing Authority came to own this land, and if in fact, the title is entirely clear.
The title is clear. I can answer that.
Yeah.
The title is clear. And the Housing Authority acquired it some 20 years ago when they were disposing of properties that were taken for unpaid taxes. I believe they paid $100 for it or something. And I checked with the legal department and they said it's completely within their authority to sell this property. So it's all okay in that regard.
Okay. Would they be required to pay any capital gains on this if they received funds for the sale of this?
No, a governmental authority, I don't think pays capital gain.
Okay. All right.
But I don't know, Mark Milne left. I don't know what's happening. I don't think. No, they wouldn't pay any capital gains. Any other members, questions for Marty while we have him? None? All right, Joe, you want to go ahead and make your presentation?
Thank you, Lindsay, and members of the committee. I'm Joe Berlandi. I live at 33 Mid-Pine Road, and I've had the, I guess you say, the honor or privilege of being the president of the Cummaquid Association for many years. We have 350 homes in Cummaquid Heights, so we have a lot of housing. We have very little open space, and that is why we would support the request to create the open space, which we also need. Again, we don't need more housing in Cummaquid Heights. We have so much housing around Cummaquid Heights, but we understand the need for housing. But we also understand the need for open space, so we would support his request to purchase the property and use it for open space. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the general public who would like to? Oh, Farley, you have a question?
Yeah, one more question. Why wouldn't you sell this land directly to the town?
To the town of Barnstable?
Yes.
I don't know if the town of Barnstable would want to buy it. I think what's kind of a creative approach here that we've come up with is a scenario that really could be a win-win-win for all parties, because consistent with the provisions of the CPC funds and utilization of funds, it uniquely checks the box for open space, for housing, and it also adds to the Barnstable Fire District, Water District property, and it's something that the neighborhoods would support as well. So really, it's a win-win-win. So it's an appropriate use of CPC money that you have in a kind of a creative way, so that the town wouldn't have to tap into some of their other funds that they might need for police, fire, municipal services, education, etc. You know, it's consistent with the CPA funds that you have in your budget. So I don't know. I mean,
all right, thank you. Anyone else from the public who'd like to speak? Chris, go ahead. The mic's still on.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Years ago, maybe 20 or so years ago, residents of West Barnstable wrote personal checks for the acquisition of what was then known as a Conan property, and on which now is the Meeting House Farm property. So is the neighborhood so engaged that they're ready to pony up some dough to lessen the expense to the CPC funding?
With all due respect, if I may answer that, we have not even entertained or even discussed a situation like that. Not that we would be opposed, but it's never come up before.
All right. Is that it, Chris?
Yeah, it's a factor that can weigh in on this conversation. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public care to speak to this matter? Steve?
Mr. Chairman and committee, we would be interested in contributing something, what we can afford to contribute, of course, which wouldn't be enough to buy the whole property, but we would certainly use that to encourage other members of the community to support it as well. I don't know that we'd ever come up with enough money to cover the entire cost, but we certainly would be willing to contribute.
Thank you. Anyone else from the general public? Seeing none? Any further member discussion? Tom?
I think it is important for the neighborhood to have a piece of the pie, piece of the money into the pot here. I think it's you don't need to be 100%, but at least it's a share that will show the financial support for this application.
Any other comments by members? Anyone sensing a motion? Seeing no motion.
Can I just?
We have no motion. Go ahead.
Can we clarify something? So this is moving to application phase. It would be the motion, right?
Right, but I don't know that you're going to see much difference between this and there are not too many details to be worked out in an application.
Right.
So. Not seeing a motion, I'll have to declare that this matter doesn't carry. So, thank you very much for your presentation, and good luck with your project.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very
Chairman
much,
and members of
everybody.
the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda is a letter of intent has been received from the Department of Public Works requesting $300,000 in open space and recreation funds for the Cape Cod Rail Trail Phase 4, pre-25% design services. Matching funds in the amount of $500,000 have been provided by a Mass Trails grant. And we have Paul Graves of our DPW here to present. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Phase 4 of the Cape Cod Rail Trail will extend the rail trail, which is a 12-foot wide paved off-road shared use path, meaning pedestrians, bicyclists, and other non-motorized transportation can use it. We would extend it from the termination of Phase 3 at Mary Dunn Road in Barnstable to the Barnstable Sandwich Town Line on Service Road. That's a distance when you take into account the various zigzags and so forth in that layout. That's a distance of nearly 10 miles. And we currently have received this $500,000 Mass Trails grant. We requested $800,000. They had 2 rounds, one a maximum of $500,000, one a maximum of $300,000. With Mass Trails staff agreement, the town applied for both and the maximum. We did not receive the $300,000 one, so we can proceed with the $500,000 grant with our land surveying, aerial surveying, and engineering services, but we won't get as far, obviously. We need another $300,000, and another possibility is that we could wait for a future Mass Trails next round. However, historically, they've tended not to, repeat awards to the same awardees in the next cycle. So we would appreciate your consideration of this. This would just be the very first part of designing that. This would prepare the plans that we need so that we can then enter the Mass DOT process. Mass DOT has funded for construction the other recent extensions of the rail trail, and we have every reason to believe that they would fund this extension as well. And so the estimated construction cost for Phase 4 at this time is in the neighborhood of $20 million. We don't know what year it would be built because we're not that far along in the project yet. But if you were to approve these funds, you would be leveraging quite a bit more in future construction funds with these funds. Mass DOT is not going to commit the construction funds until we get the plans far enough along that that they can feel comfortable doing that. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Members, questions? Deb? Welcome back. Microphone?
Unmute yourself.
Microphone, Deb?
How is that? Okay.
That's better.
How long has this project been in the works? I know we committed money to it how many years ago? The whole
this one we have not, this is our first dive into Phase 4. You're thinking of Phase 3.
Well, probably 1 and 2, actually, because we funded
it's Phase 3 that we funded. There's only 2 phases in Barnstable, 3 and 4.
Okay.
2 was Yarmouth, and 1 was Dennis crossing over.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I think we need to start finishing this rail trail because it's finished in Dennis and it's finished in Yarmouth, and Barnstable is the outlier, and we need to get someplace besides Barnstable. So if anybody doesn't, if no one has any other questions, I move this to application.
Second.
All right, we have a motion. Members have more questions they want to consider, or someone have a second on that? We really should cover questions first. All right, we'll hold that motion for now.
Can I,
Tom,
or go ahead, Tom.
Paul, how long is this going to design phase for $800,000? Are you talking about at least a couple of years of survey and design work?
Yes, our Mass Trails grant, ordinarily they're for 1 year, but they agreed with us to allow us 2 years for this work because of the very large scope of this project. And so we have to complete the part of it that is awarded by Mass Trails, the 500,000 that we have. That part has to be completed by June 2024.
Okay.
And obviously, we would, if awarded, we would seek to get the remainder of that work done at the same time.
Okay, thanks.
And who was the other hand there? Was it?
Jim.
Go ahead, Jim.
Can you just clarify? I mean, our next motion point, or next, agenda point is 195,000 for engineering on phase 3. Can you just talk about the difference of what this engineering on phase 3 is versus phase 4 work?
Sure. On phase 3, we're nearing the end of design, and in the years that phase 3 has been in planning and design, Mass DOT has actually increased their requirements for what project sponsors need to do. And so that 195,000 relates to additional right-of-way plan requirements, additional 100% plan requirements, and those additional requirements equate to consultant time to perform the additional services. And also there were a few things that came up on phase 3 that weren't originally in the scope. One of them is there's a proposed small parking lot at the Barnstable end of phase 3, immediately off of Mary Dunn Road, near Israel Pond, and unfortunately, it's within the buffer distance from the pond, and there's also a question of habitat and endangered species, and so additional services are needed to work through all of that and get to a point where we receive the approvals we need.
Okay, thanks. I agree with Deb. I think this is a great project, and people love the phases that have been completed already. So we'd love to get this through Barnstable. I would just maybe on Deb's motion add, the caveat that we continue to try to apply for that extra $300,000 grant. And if we get it, great, return the CPC money. If not, put our best foot forward to get it. But I would just add that into Deb's motion.
And would that be a second there, James, in that regard?
That would be a second in that regard. Yep.
Okay.
Anyone else with questions? Members, I had a couple questions for you, Paul. Is this fee include design for the bridge over Route 132, both lanes, and Chute-Flying Hill Road?
It does, but not to the final design. So this pre-25% design gets us all the surveying that we should need, both on the ground and aerial surveying. And the plans that will be generated here get us the plan views, profiles, and typical sections. It gives us all the surveying information that we'd need to create all the cross sections eventually later in the process. But you will see some pre-design for the bridge in this phase. But really the meat of designing the bridge over 132 would come later in the 25% and 50%, so on. That would come later.
Thank you. Has consideration of a tunnel been given in this project?
There has been some discussion of it. At this point, the anticipation is that we will put in a bridge, but we can certainly consider a tunnel. There are pros and cons to bridges and tunnels.
Well, I think the cost of building a tunnel would be considerably less than a bridge. But that was a suggestion coming, believe it or not, from the town manager, who's an engineer himself. And he asked me in one of our meetings if we considered it, and frankly, I had to admit I hadn't even thought of it. So it's a possibility, and it wouldn't be a tunnel. It would only have coverings over where the roadways were, and you could have openings and things. But I know generally among the bikeway design folks, tunnels have a bad rap on the Cape because of the cheesy way they've done it down Cape. So with those iron tubes, but I was thinking something a little more attractive than that. But anyway, I think we should throw it in the mix and bat that ball around at least a little bit.
Lindsay, I got questions. Thank you for pointing it out. So, Paul, when you said 25% design, are you saying that you need more money to finish the rest of the 75%, or is that coming up in the future?
Right. You're right. And I'm sure you know, Tom, that each phase of design does need to be funded. We're not here, asking for those future phases right now. We're asking for this one. And as was noted by one of the other members of your committee, yes, of course, the town of Barnstable applies for a lot of grants. I can tell you that because I've personally been putting those applications together, many of them. So, yeah, we will continue to apply for grants, and that we've been quite successful with it. So I can't predict whether we will be coming back to your committee. We might, but I can't foresee that right now. We need to get through this 2-year project here that we're already partway through the first year of before we get too far along on the next phases.
The next question is, at what percentage of the design would DOT be committing the construction money? 50%, 75%?
We think that they will commit it after this phase. After this phase, we should be able to demonstrate to Mass DOT that clearly it's a feasible project, and we've made good progress on it, and that's when we're going to request that they commit. But the TIP process, as you may know, has its own convolutions. So I can't predict what will happen in it, but we're pretty confident. We know that completing the Cape Cod Rail Trail is not only a town priority, not only a regional priority, it's a state priority. We've been told that by a number of officials. So we have a high level of confidence that it's going to get done. And that's all I can say about that.
Any other questions from members? All right, I'll open it up to the public. Anyone from the public here speak to this request by the Department of Public Works for the Phase 4 bikeway? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded to approve the application, the letter of intent for the Phase 4 bikeway, with the caveat that how did you actually word that, James? One more time on
Just that they continue to apply for the next round of the, I believe it was Mass Trails grant.
Great, there you have it. Everyone clear on the motion?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, call the roll. Marilyn Fifield,
Yes.
Deb Converse,
Yes.
Catherine Garofoli,
Yes.
Tom Lee,
Yes.
Marley Lewis,
Yes.
James Tenalia,
Yes.
and Lindsay Council votes yes. Next, we go to phase 3 and the funding design for that. A letter of intent has been received from the Department of Public Works requesting $195,000 for Cape Rail Trail Phase 3 engineering service. Mass DOT has committed $12.3 million for construction of the Barnstable and Yarmouth sections. And there was a question earlier about how much we've spent on this. And I have a couple of numbers for you. The so-called design, the so far design expense that we've expended has been $370,515. And we also expended $750,000 to buy the lot on Independence Drive for parking for this facility. So we have spent $1,120,515 direct expenses on the phase 3. So Paul, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So phase 3 will extend the rail trail from Old Townhouse Road in Yarmouth to Merrydown Road near Israel Pond in Barnstable. We're in the process with our consultant of preparing the 100% submittal to Mass DOT, and as that would suggest, we're getting closer. The as noted in here under estimated timeline, construction is scheduled to begin in February of 2024 and to continue for 2 years. And we're doing everything we can to keep on that schedule. Again, the $195,000 mentioned it a little bit in the previous item due to the conversation there. This is for environmental services that were extra because the issue didn't arise until later in the project, as well as a number of Mass DOT standards and other requirements that have increased over the years that since this project initially started, as well as some legal fees for the various right-of-way requirements that we have to fulfill. And part of it is actually from, as Lindsay knows, we received a Mass Trails grant for phase 3 a couple of years ago, and unfortunately at that time we asked for the 2-year project, but they only allotted us a 1-year project, and we told them that it might not be possible for us to fully expend the grant. I think it was a $200,000 grant, if I remember correctly.
I believe so.
And we told them it would be very difficult for us to get that done, in a year. I mean, just getting their award and putting it before the town council for approval and getting a signed contract for engineering, that alone takes months. That took half the time, just doing those administrative things. So part of this $195,000 is an amount, I want to say about $50,000 that unfortunately was forfeited in the previous round because it timed out. And we asked for, very strongly requested a time extension, and they were not able to do that.
Unfortunate. Any questions from members? Yes, Deb, go ahead.
Just a quick, how many miles is this one?
This one, let's see, trying to remember. I think it's on the order of between 4 to 5 miles total.
Yeah, it's four and a half, I think.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's roughly half and half in Yarmouth and Barnstable. The portion in Barnstable is entirely within the Hyannis Ponds wildlife management area. So it will be not just off-road next to the road, it'll be cross-country, it'll be off the road entirely, except at the end point where it meets Mary Dunn Road.
And there's also a bridge involved in this as well, going across Willow Street and the railroad tracks.
Right.
That's angled up to the old Higgins-Cole Road. So this has, you know, $1.5 million or more, $2 million bridge on it as well. And I'm assuming it's going to be in the style of the Dennis bridges. I don't know if that's been decided yet, Paul, or not, but
The Yarmouth Bridge?
Yes, it will. Yeah.
it'll be like that. Yeah. I don't think there's any chance for a tunnel here.
No, you're tunneling wildlife.
Yeah.
So is the 12.3 million that DOT gave you include the bridge, or is it still design stuff?
The 12.3 million is what Mass DOT has committed for construction funding based on the cost estimates to date, and that does include the bridge. It includes the entire length of phase 3. I'm sorry, from Old Town House Road in Yarmouth to Mary Dunn Road in Barnstable, including the bridge.
Okay.
And your figure for the phase 4 comes to Mary Dunn Road and takes it to the Sandwich line, correct?
Yeah.
Are you asking me?
Yes, yeah. It
Yes,
completes the trail.
If you want to see a map, we did submit maps of phase 3 and phase 4. I honestly don't know if you have those in your packet or not, but we did submit those.
I can pull that up if you would like.
I think that was.
We don't have it in the package, but it would be nice to know how many miles of the trail that is proposing as part of the phase 4.
Well, phase 4 is roughly 4.5 miles. Part of it is in Yarmouth and part of it is in Barnstable.
But that's
phase
3.
Phase 3, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, confusing. So the less expensive ask from us is from Yarmouth to Barnstable, and the 300,000 is the Sandwich from Barnstable to Sandwich.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Could you show us those plans, David, if you have them on hand?
Which one? Phase 3 and 4, or because they're separate documents?
Yeah, separate documents would be fine. Whatever's easier for you.
Okay. Which one do you guys want first?
Well, phase 3.
Okay.
That's the one we're talking about.
In the meantime, Chairman Council, may I ask if these maps can be available to the public?
They are
on the town site already. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, they're on the town Cape Cod Rail Trail website. If you go to Public Works projects, you can find those.
All right, here's the phase 3 thing that I have. If this is what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Are you able to zoom in a little bit, please? Just to make it more clear to people. Yeah.
There you go.
So they,
Oh, yeah.
about where that label says project location, that's about where the town line is, and so the portion in red to the left of that project location bubble is in Barnstable, and the portion to the east or right is in Yarmouth.
And is Yarmouth funding they fund their side of the planning and we fund ours, correct?
Yes, I should note that early on in the project, there was an agreement to fund it at a 70% Yarmouth, 30% Barnstable share.
Thank you.
So
Any other
Yarmouth,
questions?
oh, I'm sorry, Linda.
Go ahead.
Yarmouth is completed, correct?
No.
No.
No. Where have I walked then? Okay.
Oh, well, I should point out part of the Yarmouth path will be widening an existing path that already exists in part of their area.
Mm.
So you may have seen something there, but it's going to be reconstructed wider and to the standards of the Cape Cod Rail Trail.
Mm. Okay.
Thanks, Paul. That's correct. The lower section of the red line in Yarmouth there that goes below Mid-Tech Drive, that's the old bikeway that Yarmouth built years ago.
Mm.
And you can still ride it. You can go all the way to Peaktown from there, but they are going to improve it. And where that piece in Yarmouth heads north is where it's going to actually divert around Mid-Tech Drive and get onto old Higgins Grove Road there.
Yep. Okay.
And that'll be a sizable parking lot too, where the middle P is. So it's going to be, I think, 100, 120 cars, Paul. That's a big one.
Wow. Yeah. It's a busy little path because I walked most of it in Yarmouth.
Yep. I ride it all the time. That's a great spot. Go park at the realty office and you can head east.
Mm-hmm.
All right, David, you want to show us the other plan while we have plans up?
Yeah, 1 second.
If you could please zoom in if you're able to, that would be helpful. The black line on the right of the map is where phase 3 crosses and terminates, and then the yellow-orange zigzaggy line represents proposed phase 4. And we've split phase 4 into 3 subphases. That middle one, phase 4.2, is essentially the bridge crossing proposed on 132. And the reason why we're doing this is because you might remember before I said our current estimate for phase 4 for construction is about $20 million, probably going to increase, right? And we know through the TIP process, the Transportation Improvement Program that the state runs, and that the money for this project construction is anticipated to come from as well. Part of that is federal funding. There's a regional component to the approvals for that, and typically the Cape Cod Metropolitan Planning Organization is the one that makes the decisions ultimately on what gets those TIP funds in our region. And typically they don't have enough to fund a 20 million or greater project in any cycle. So we've seen where it's to our advantage to manage the amount of construction cost in a project, even if we have to break it into phases. So we're showing it in phases simply for budgeting purposes in case that mode that I just described, having to split it among different funding years, occurs. But really it's going to be a continuous trail, again, extending from Mary Dunn Road on the east, which is on the right side of the page here, all the way out to Sandwich alongside Surface Road on the west, the left side of the page.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, David, you can take those down. Any additional questions from members on the phase 3 request?
I'll make the motion to approve phase 3.
Second.
Oh, wait a minute. I probably should have opened it to public comment too. Well, we have a moving second, but we'll open it to public comment. Now, is anyone here to speak to this project? Seeing none, we'll continue forward. Any other questions? Everyone clear on the motion? Move this to application? All right. Seeing none, we'll call the roll. Marilyn Fifield?
Yes.
Deb Converse?
Yes.
Kathleen Garofoli?
Yes.
Tom Lee?
Yes.
Farley Lewis?
Yes.
James Denalia?
Yes.
And Lindsay Council votes yes. Thank you very much, Paul. We look forward to seeing you next month. We'll get this on the agenda.
Thank you very much, everyone.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, now we move to applications. An application from the trustees of reservations requesting $286,886 in community preservation recreation funds for a new children's play area and renovation of the existing pathways to meet ADA regulations in the Armstrong Kelly Park, Osterville. This request represents a portion of the total project cost of $1,425,000, with $1,138,134 in matching funds committed. A recreation restriction will be required to be executed. This is continued from July 18th, 2022. And I believe we have someone here, Elizabeth Carey Soul. Yes, Tom. Yes.
I have to recuse myself.
Yes. Thank you very much.
I don't want to see your face, Tom. Good.
They're a tough bunch. Tough bunch. So Elizabeth, you're
Hi.
here?
Yes, I am. Good evening to the committee. Thank you for having us.
So you're continuing your request for the funding?
That's correct. And I don't have any new information to share with the committee tonight. The design remains the same.
All right. I understand you've been in communication with our legal department, and this is going to require a perpetual recreation easement restriction. We all
That's our
folks all right?
understanding. Yes, yes.
Lindsay?
Yes. Go ahead, Deb.
What about the question you had about the wood as opposed to the sand dust or whatever that dust stuff was? You weren't sure that we could fund the replacement of the wooden structure but it should be another,
It can't be impervious surfaces. It can be stone dust, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
but it can't be brick or something like that.
and it can't be that wood that's already there.
No, I don't believe so. I think that would be considered a hardened project.
So that would be a change in the plan, the original plan, then, right?
No, they've already made that change, I believe. Correct, Elizabeth?
I think that was 2 iterations ago, wasn't it?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, good. I mean, I like the wood, but
Just to clarify, are we all set on the rec restriction? Or is that solidified, or is there still questions around that?
I think we need to review that and make sure that the trustees board is going to approve it. I think that's actually the first thing we ought to do if we want to approve this, and make sure that's all agreed to before we allocate any funding. And once we have that executed, we can bring that restriction as well as the application to the council. So any motion for this would include not only the funding, but the agreement on a recreation restriction easement to go in perpetuity with the property.
Chairman Council, I was under the impression that the next step was for this group to take a vote. And then once the vote was obtained, then we would work with council to finalize the recreation restriction. And then that's what would go to the town for a vote.
They both have to go. The funding and the restriction.
That's right. Yes, that's correct.
So we would approve the funding and then contingent upon the acceptance by your group of the easement.
That's correct. Yes.
So we'd be approving one with the other. Deb, did I see your hand? Yeah.
yeah, I was just, it's nice to see that there's almost a 50-50 match or 100%. It's nice to see the match of the over $1 million to the amount they're asking for. And I move that we accept this application.
With the easement.
With the easement, right.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Is there any comment from the public regarding this project?
It's not an easement, it's a restriction.
Right.
It's they call it easement restriction in the technical documents. I like to all just call them a recreation restriction. So we have a conservation restriction, historic restriction, housing restriction. The exact legal terminology gets too confusing for me. So I call it a recreation restriction because you're restricting the property in perpetuity for public access. Is that clear? And this is required on any property that this is private property in this case. So if we're giving funds, much like we do with the historic project, to a private entity on private property, CPC CPC Act requires that we receive something in return for that. And in this case, it's the recreation restriction easement. So no one from the public here to speak to this? Seeing none? Any other questions from the members? Everyone clear on the motion? I'll call the roll. Marilyn Fifield.
Yes.
Deb Converse.
Yes.
Kathleen Garofoli.
Yes.
Tom Lee is abstained. Farley Lewis.
Yes.
James Tenalia.
Yes.
Lindsay Council votes yes. Very good. So we'll get to work, Elizabeth, on that restriction with
That's
you.
great.
Legal. When we get that ironed out and you've had a chance to take it to your board, we'll submit it to the town manager for inclusion on a town council agenda.
All right. Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
And I also know too that work's already begun over there. And you can't begin any of the work under this until 30 days after the town council vote.
Understood.
So keep that in mind. I mean, you're taking out boards. I don't think that's part of our deal, but when it comes to doing the actual items, you have to wait for the council
Understood.
approval.
Understood.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank
Very
you so
good.
much.
Thank
Have a
you.
good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Yep. Right. Okay. Next we have somebody have a question? No? An application from Tales of Cape Cod Incorporated requesting $125,000 in community preservation, historic preservation funds to provide accessibility to the building by installing a lift leading to a new accessible entrance on the east side of the building and regrading to create an accessible walkway to the building. Total estimated project cost of the project is $372,497, with matching funds provided in the amount of $120,000 from a Massachusetts Cultural Facilities Fund grant and $147,497 in additional grants and private donations. I believe you have Gene Gill here before us.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Our application remains as presented on October the 17th. We are asking the committee for a grant of $125,000. We were pleased to host members of the committee on site on October the 15th and gave them an opportunity to see where the construction would take place and visit the rest of the building as well. We really have no additional information other than I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Very good. Members, any questions after you saw the site visit? I think it's an actually really great addition to this building. It's going to put it in a location where folks can get right in unobstructed on that property, which is a challenge. But I think they've done a great job putting this in where it won't be obtrusive to the rest of the historic structure. Any other comments, questions?
I would make the motion under historic preservation.
Second.
All right. Any comments from the public on this one?
Just that it's a lot of work and they've done a wonderful job, you know, and expanding the programming and raising extra money, and it's needed, this access.
Anyone else? Public members here?
May I just add that, may I add, it's Marilyn here. I'm just glad that the State Historical Commission is a partner with this too. I think we can all be glad for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Marilyn, for bringing that up. These folks have gone in, Mass Historic, local historic, Old Kings, and got all their approvals beforehand, so there'll be no surprises. And that is a formula going forward for these historic projects, is the way we need to go. Much the same as we just did with the recreation restriction easement, getting that out of the way first, and having that with us when we go to the council makes a big difference. Any other comments, questions on the request of Tales of Cape Cod? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Marilyn Fifield.
Yes.
Deb Converse.
Yes.
Kathleen Garofoli.
Yes.
Tom Lee.
Yes.
Farley Lewis.
Yes.
James Tenalia.
Yes.
And Lindsay Council votes yes. Thank you very much, Gene. We'll get you on a town council agenda as soon as we can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all the members of the committee.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, Dean.
Okay. That completes our letters of interest and letters of intent and applications. We received no correspondence this month. So I will go into updates. I did speak with the manager's office, and they have worked out the details for the Department of Public Works Phase 1 restoration to the Zion Historic Museum. So that will be back in December. As it will be the request of the Unitarian Church for $300,000. They are anticipated actually also in December. And I did not get a firm commitment to present the Osterville Recreation Playgrounds. I know they've been having meetings out there, but I don't think they're complete with that. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. I know they're very busy over there in Mark Marinacio's town architect, his office. So we'll look for that, but I don't have any updates.
The field looks great over there.
The field came out great. That was done with CIP funding. So they're looking to still take down that building, the old community building over there. And there's the possibility of putting up a small bathroom storage facility over there too. So in addition to our playground. So that's sort of still in flux, but the field looks great. They did the rolled sod, and other than the brick building in left field, looks great. So there was that. And we have not heard from the Marstons Mills Community Church. Have we, Alan? Nothing from them? Well, I don't know how long we're going to carry that. I'll see what I can do in the next month to find out where they're at. We had left that with them to get some pricing on a historic preservation expert. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if they're having difficulty finding or getting bids on that. So anyway, I will take it on to check that. Any other public comment going forward? Anyone care to speak to the group? None? Seeing none? Any items for general discussion? Seeing none? One item we do have for that is election of officers. We're a little overdue for that. In order to entertain that, we are required to put the election of officers on the floor and accept any and all nominations. I was inclined with 2 members absent to roll it over again, and I will leave that as the first question. Do we want to wait till we have a full contingent, or shall we do it this evening? And I'll leave it up to you. Comments?
Well, we've just had it on the agenda for a while, and you know, I think we need to go for it. So your future is assured.
Mine, you mean?
Yeah, yours and Tom and Marilyn's.
Well, you can nominate a slate if you'd like, but we do have to open it up so anyone who has a nomination can come forward.
I think
Seeing none?
Oh, sorry.
I would nominate the current slate that we have for another term.
I second it.
Catherine, you had a question?
I just don't see how we'll likely be missing other people if we wait any longer.
Yeah.
Good point. Good point. So it's been moved and seconded to nominate the current slate of offices for reappointment. Is there any other nominations from the floor? None? Any comment from the public? Like throw the bums out? No? Nothing? Okay. I'll call the roll on the slate of officers of Lindsay Council for Chairman, Tom Lee for Vice Chair, and Marilyn Fifield for our intrepid Secretary and Minutes Manager. That was the slate. And I'll call the roll. Marilyn Fifield?
Yes.
Deb Converse?
Yes.
Catherine Garofoli?
Yes.
Tom Lee?
Yes.
Barley Lewis?
Yes.
James Tenalia?
Yes.
And Lindsay Council votes yes. Thank you very much for your support, members, and I'm looking forward to another good year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The 2023 Community Preservation Meeting Schedule was handed out. It looked good to me. Any changes or major issues with that? I did want to check with Steve Robichaud to make sure we weren't conflicting with anything he saw on the horizon. Ellen, you did a pretty good job of checking that though, right?
Yes, I'm able to see where the planning board meetings are. I know that he's a planning board member.
Sure.
And I was able to offset that to end our meetings at the time where he would have to switch over to planning board.
Okay,
So
so that's okay then.
It doesn't conflict that I could see.
Any other comments by members? We just missed the usual 3 dates because of Monday holidays. That's generally the way it factors in.
Right.
So I don't think we need a vote on that. If anything comes up between now and the next meeting or two, we can make a change, but I think we'll go with that schedule for now and post those dates. We will want to make sure though, and I'll jump ahead to the last item. We want to do the December meeting by Zoom.
Yes.
Right now, we're not required to have a public meeting, so if we want to continue with Zoom, that's fine with me. Seems we're getting pretty good response public-wise. People are tuning in and listening and things. So, although I do miss public meetings, I think Zoom's working for us. So we'll go with Zoom in December.
Yep.
And we've done the officer. Last one, CPC Handbook Updates. We were okay with that, except I think we did need to make an update on our historic procedures. Is that correct, Ellen? We wanted to include information on the process going through historic requests. In other words, to get the Mass Historic involved earlier, but we haven't finished that, right? We haven't. Let's see if Ellen and I can't get that done for next month, and we'll put that on for December.
Can you send me a draft too, please, Marilyn?
Well, we're sending everybody the draft. You know, we're just going to write up what we think the order, which the order is going to be very simply,
Right.
almost when we get the letter of intent, that they are aware that they have to get their project plans to not only to us, but to the Barnstable Historic Committee. If it's in the Old Kings Highway, they'll have to copy them,
right,
and a copy to Mass Historic. And Barbara Harris has agreed to facilitate the information flow to Mass Historic. So it's going to be just a couple of lines, but we'll get it out to everybody for their approval prior to the meeting. And Marilyn, if you'd make your folks aware too that we're bringing Mass Historic into this much earlier than we have, that would be great.
Right.
Okay. Yes, Deb.
Real quick. I love a field trip, Lindsay. The field trips that, well, I call them field trips, the site visits that we've had are very informative. And it makes me feel like more of, of the project. I just understand more from going. So thank you for having the couple that we've had.
You're more than welcome. And if you see things coming forward, we did have one with the trustees at their property, but if any of you want to go take a look at these parking areas for the bikeway, or take a ride up to Fish and Wildlife to see where that little 12-space parking lot's going to be, I'd be certain more than willing to do that. If you want to do that before the next meeting, I could take you out there.
Okay, depends on the temperature.
Yeah, exactly. So if anyone wanted to do that, let me know. Is there anything else on here that folks might want to take a look at? I think the other one that might be worth a visit is the Zion Museum.
I think so too. That would be a good one.
Yes.
That building has needed work since the day we bought it.
Yeah.
And what that delay came down to, the fact that most of these repairs that we were requesting, it was a little, people weren't understanding that these weren't anything that we would ever ask a leaseholder to do. These are like structural issues and major building problems that we all knew when we bought that thing back in, I forget, 2008 or whatever it was. So these were beyond the scope of what a normal lease. But what it did spur is the fact that town manager needs to look at all of these leases to make sure that it's, within reason, that these tenants aren't expected to pay for these large capital and structural improvements. Chris, go ahead.
Thank you. Can you please copy the town council on those site visits? That might be helpful in making the sell.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Comments, questions? I think we've covered everything, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Moved and seconded, discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Marilyn Fifield,
Yes.
Deb Converse,
Yes.
Catherine Garofoli,
Yes.
Tom Lee,
Yes.
Farley Lewis,
Yes.
James Tenalia,
Yes.
and Lindsay Council votes yes. Thank you very much, members. Drop a
Thank
line
you.
to Ellen